But welcome to Explore and Analyzing Your Watershed with web maps and data portals. My name is Jackie Encinas. I am a program assistant with Georgia Adopt-A-Stream.
And hi, I'm Cecilia, and I am also program assistant with Georgia Adopt-A-Stream. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Georgia Adopt-A-Stream, it is a state program that trains and encourages citizen scientists to monitor the water quality of our state's beautiful and diverse waterways. Confluence is Georgia Adopt-A-Stream's annual volunteer conference, and which is what you are currently a part of, so thank you for joining us. As many of you know, this is our first year doing Confluence virtually, so we thank everyone for bearing with us as we navigate, fun technical difficulties like what we experienced today and some of our other sessions. So thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to the session today.
Yeah, and before we jump into it, just a few Zoom housekeeping notes. So everyone is muted, and we are going to disable the chat function. That way we can give all our full attention to Jon's presentation. If you have any questions that come up throughout the session, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. At the end of the presentation, we will look through those and go through any questions that you all have. Also, if you have an issue, like a technical issue, you can raise your hand using the button, raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. That will notify Cecilia or I, and we will get in touch with you to resolve that issue. Yeah, let's just go ahead and get started. Jon Becker is a data analyst for the U.S. EPA Region 4 Water Division here in Atlanta. He enjoys paddling, and his favorite Georgia water body is the Okefenokee Swamp. So, Jon, I'll go ahead and pass the virtual microphone to you, and we can go ahead and get started.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jackie and Cecilia. Today we're going to be talking about exploring and analyzing watersheds or water bodies with web maps and data portals. And in my role at EPA, I work in the water division at the Atlanta regional office. And so I've worked for, I guess I've been with EPA for 19 years. Most of that has been with the water division, and most of that has been kind of focusing on data analysis and geographic information systems. And, over that time, there's been the development of so many online resources, and that citizens or citizen scientists such as the Adopt-A-Stream volunteers can use to learn more about the water bodies and watersheds. And I have some background. I used to do volunteer monitoring myself when I lived back in Texas, and I hope to someday get back to doing it because it's a lot of fun and you learn a lot. What I'm going to do today is I have lots of slides. They're mostly screenshots of websites. I thought about trying to do live demos of different things, and I thought that was going to be possibly slow and problematic. So I'm going to just really quickly, there's so much good stuff out there. I wanted to touch as quickly as possible on a lot of different options for you and just kind of give you a big picture of what you can hit, and then you can kind of visit these websites and dig deeper. And if you have any questions later, feel free to reach out to me. My email and phone number, I think is on the last slide. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. And hopefully we'll have some time for questions and that sort of thing at the end. So first of all, EPA has a website called How's My Waterway? And this has been around for a little while, but they just released a new version this summer. And it's really revamped and much improved. It's actually won a big national award recently. And it's really, there's a lot there. I'm still kind of digging into it all, but it does a really good job of bringing together a lot of different water-related data sets. And it's designed to be very user-friendly and in plain language. You know, a lot of times some of this stuff can get a little overly technical. But basically the way it works is you start off, and there's, on this website, you can see, you can type in your address or any kind of place-related information, or you can use your cell phone's location, and then it will drill down and give you a summary for that location. And it kind of does it in 3 different ways. You could, what we're going to focus on mainly is at what they call the community level. And so here's where I've entered in an address, and it created a watershed boundary for that location. And the way it is organized is, you can see there on the right, it has listed water bodies, and these are water bodies that are assessed by the Georgia Environmental Protection Division. And then there's monitoring stations, and these are monitoring stations that come from the National Water Quality Portal, and there'll be a slide on how you can directly access that later. But this kind of shows you monitoring stations that these might be from state or federal agencies. A lot of these are Georgia EPD stations, but there can be other types of stations in there. It doesn't have Georgia Adopt-A-Stream data in it, but it does have, I think, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper submits to the Water Quality Portal. And then also permitted dischargers, any facility that has a permit to discharge. And you can toggle those on and off, and you can click on the features and learn more about them. You can also scroll over to the monitoring tab, and then you can see the stations, and you can also filter the stations to certain parameters that those locations monitor for. So, you know, let's say you were monitoring for nutrients at your particular location, and you wanted to see how it compares to other monitoring stations in the area. You could filter this to nutrients there. You can see there's 21 monitoring stations in this watershed that are monitoring for nutrients, and then you can click on those and get more information and download reports with the data. So that's pretty nice. You can also get information about the water bodies themselves. Again, these are from reports from the Georgia EPD as part of their 305B report that's done every 2 years, where they assess the water bodies, comparing them to their designated uses that are part of the water quality standards. And then they classify the water body. Is it meeting those standards, or is it impaired? That's what the term that's used when the water body is not meeting those standards. And then if you see these little arrows down there at the bottom right where it says like Arrow Creek or North Fork of Peachtree Creek, you could then click on that and learn more about those water bodies. There's also kind of statewide summary tables in there. There's a ton of information. I'm just kind of scratching the surface here. You can actually download spreadsheets that you know, summarize all the water bodies in the state. Here's a different way you can kind of drill into it. This is at the state water quality level, and so if you wanted to just, in this case, search for a certain water body, but you could also, where it says parameter groups, you could search for certain, you know, you want to see all the waters that are in the state that are impaired for fecal coliform bacteria, something like that. You can search in that sort of way. So I really recommend this site. It's really user-friendly, and it has a ton of information at the community scale, but also at the state level. There's another one called the EPA Waters Geo Viewer, and it's kind of similar to How's My Waterway. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually EPA kind of merges this into that, but it does have some differences. It also will show the impaired waters and the facilities that discharge to waters, monitoring stations, stream gauges, and then also it'll show locations of where non-point source pollution projects to repair non-point source pollution issues have gone into place based on grants. But one thing that it does that the How's My Waterway doesn't do so much is it allows you to identify a watershed, but then generate certain types of reports. And we'll see that in a second here. So here's kind of what the interface looks for that. And so you can see on the left, it'll have kind of groupings of layers, like it has EPA linked data there. And then there's, you can turn those things on and off. And then you can click on features and get more information. Now here's where it would take you to a link in the EPA. This is the EPA Attainment System, where it gives you summary reports about TMDLs. And, you know, I think this is actually, well, we can go with this. This is an earlier version of my presentation. I made a few changes this morning, but I think when I opened it, this most recent time, I opened the earlier version, but it's 98% the same. Anyway, so, but one of the features that this has, you know, traditionally, I'm sure many of you on the call have done what's called a watershed delineation, where you have a point and you want to identify the watershed that's upstream of that. And kind of the traditional old school method was using a topographic map and then taking a point, such as the point at the bottom of this map on the right, where it crosses, the dotted line crosses the stream, and then you kind of draw your dotted line perpendicular to the topo lines, and that's how you would delineate the watershed. And in this new method, you know, that are on a lot of these websites, it either is using pre-calculated catchment areas, because there have been watersheds that have been calculated, small watersheds for the whole country, and sometimes they can aggregate those small watersheds into larger watersheds, or it can actually kind of delineate the watershed on the fly. It just kind of depends on which website you're using. But and that's what this Waters Geo Viewer does, and then also the USGS StreamStats that we'll look at in a minute. So in this case, there's this tool within Waters Geo Viewer, and it's kind of highlighted on the top right there, where you delineate a drainage area. And so you click on a point on the stream, and then it delineates that watershed. And then there's also a tool within that where you can click and say, I want to generate a watershed report. And it will, you know, it's basically connecting to tables of data that have already been calculated for all the watersheds in the country. And there's a ton of great information there about the flow and the watershed and the drainage area. And then also they break it down into land cover types. And we'll see some more of that in a few minutes. But in this bottom right-hand panel where it says NHD plus catchment and watershed data, and then StreamCat catchment and watershed data, if you click on that StreamCat catchment and watershed data, there's even a ton more, you know, fields that have been calculated in there, including where they've broken down the land cover by a stream buffer. And so, you know, of course, the more protected your stream buffer is, the better that's going to be for water quality in your stream. And so you can kind of quickly get a sense of how protected the buffer zone is of a particular watershed of interest, and it'll show you what percent is forested or wetlands versus developed residential, commercial, industrial, those sorts of things. Another way to access some of this EPA water related data is in the desktop Google Earth platform, and that's a free downloadable software. You know, it's different than Google Maps like most of us use. This is actually a software that you can download, and then EPA will make these data layers available in a format called a KML, and you can download that KML and then add it to Google Earth, and then you can create your own maps, and you can see all of this, and you can save it. You can add your own layers. You know, if you had your own monitoring stations, you can add those as points, and so that is you know, it's a type of a geographic information system, and it's designed to be user friendly, and something that you can continually add to and save. So that's pretty neat. Another EPA web mapping interface that is out there is called the EnviroAtlas, and this is developed by the EPA Office of Research and Development. And this is huge. This website has tons of data layers within it. A lot of them, you know, are beyond just the scope of water. In fact, most of them are, but there are some water related ones, but it's they have, you know, a lot of layers that are related to ecosystem services, such as hold on a second, climate stabilization, clean air, biodiversity conservation. You can see a lot of land cover related layers, including estimates for impervious cover, and you can do this at just about any scale. And then there's other special analytical tools within that. And so here's a screen that shows you the EnviroAtlas, just what it looks like. And you see on the left, they have things kind of grouped within certain general categories. And so they have carbon storage, crop productivity, ecosystem markets, so on. Land cover, is you know, one of the big ones here. And so this is what it's displaying right now is called the National Land Cover Data Set, where they've classified remote sensing imagery into general categories. Again, so the red areas in this are developed areas like roads and cities and things like that. And then the green are the forested areas, different types of forested areas or wetlands, and then of course the blue for the water bodies. And this is at a 30-meter pixel resolution. So each individual pixel, if you zoom in, would be 30 meters by 30 meters. So it's not super detailed, but it is good for just kind of getting a rough assessment of an area in terms of, you know, how what the land cover classifications are. And then these can also be used to show estimates of impervious cover for an area. And so of course, you know, the higher the impervious cover, the more kind of unnatural land cover types that there are in a watershed, that the more that's going to put pressure on the water quality. And so it makes it, you know, obviously there's a relationship there. So this is another option that you can use to kind of drill down and look more closely at a watershed and kind of help identify what might be affecting the water quality. And then these are one of the charts that you can get out of EnviroAtlas. One of the things I should back up. I don't have a screenshot in this here, but you can also look at floodplains and wetlands areas based on the National Wetlands Inventory. And so if you zoom in, you can see those areas, and so that can also be useful. But again, this is another summary chart, and this is summarizing for this particular watershed. I clicked on a certain watershed, a small watershed, and then it generated this report with these graphs and also the table down below, and it shows you the percentages for that watershed of the land cover classifications. But there's a ton of stuff within this EnviroAtlas. You know, I this morning when I was kind of getting ready for this, I thought probably what I should have named this was rabbit holes, because every one of these data sets, every one of these websites, the more you start kind of digging into it, you can really start to go down some rabbit holes if you're interested in environmental data and water data, because there's just so much out there. And you know, you can pretty quickly just find yourself digging deeper and deeper, and it's all pretty interesting. So here's another one that EPA has available called the EPA Enforcement and Compliance History Online, and there's the website. So the acronym is ECHO. And so what this does is it takes all of the different enforcement and compliance data sets and relates them to a facility. And so it could be anything. It can be related to the NPDES, the pollution discharge system, in terms of their you know, their enforcement and compliance record for a given facility for that, but it can also be related to other things, such as if they had air permits or hazardous waste. And so when you click on the facility, you can then drill down and look more detailed about all of the different environmental permits that facility has, and then you can see more information. And so here, this screenshot is for Dalton, Georgia. Here's a this is where you're looking at one specific facility, and so you can filter it. I don't have that on this one, but you can choose to look only at facilities that have NPDES discharges, and you can also then filter to see which ones have, let's say, significant non-compliance flags, things like that. And so you can really kind of drill down deeper and look at a given area and kind of identify facilities that may be having issues in a certain area, violations, things like that. And then there's little interactive charts. If you click on given facilities, and then you can click again on the facility itself and get more information and see what they discharge and what was exceeding its permitted value, things like that. So again, you can really go deep down the rabbit hole, especially on some of the larger facilities that have more data. This is a project that I've kind of gotten involved in the last couple of years, and it's specifically related to using remote sensing to identify possible harmful algal blooms on large lakes. And so it's not so much stream related, but if there's anybody on here who is interested in monitoring on lakes, you may want to take a look at this. It's called the EPA Cyanobacteria Assessment Network is the acronym is Cyan. And so they have an app. Right now it's an Android app, and but they are currently developing a browser-based version that could be used on a computer desktop or through an iPhone, and that will likely be available later this year. But basically the way it works is you zoom into a lake of interest, and then you put a point on the lake And then what it does is it analyzes recent satellite imagery. And now they're getting to the point where they're getting this imagery every day. And if there is what they believe to be a cyanobacteria bloom based on the computer algorithm that has been developed, then it will give you a little pop-up like you see on the right there for Lake Hancock in Florida. And it will show you the estimated counts of the cyanobacteria in cells per milliliter. And it'll also give you, there's a chart that shows you, what those numbers mean in terms of, is that high or is it medium or is it low? Is there, most places there'll be no bloom, but sometimes there will be some, especially in the summer months when the blooms are more likely to form. So that's a pretty cool recent app that's been developed in emerging technology. And so what this will help, it doesn't tell you if, when these blooms form, they when the blooms die off, sometimes they release toxins into the water. And those can cause a lot of problems for recreation use, where they can irritate the skin, or they can be ingested and can cause a lot of problems. Some pets have died from ingesting these, and there can also be problems where extra treatment has to occur on the drinking water if there's a drinking water intake for a plant near there. And so this doesn't, the presence of the bacteria doesn't really say that there's toxins in the water, but it does indicate that, monitoring may want to be done at that location to test for the toxins. So it's just kind of a screening tool, but pretty interesting new technology. Another web map that's out there is the USGS national map. They have a national viewer. And it's similar in some ways to some of the maps that we've already seen, but it does have some other options. And one of the things that they have in there that we haven't seen is they show the national land cover data set for various years. That data set comes out about every 5 or 6 years, and so you can turn it on for previous years, and you can see how an area has changed. Let's say you have a monitoring station or a water body you're interested in, and there's been a lot of change over time, over the last, especially the last 20 years when they've had these data layers, and you could kind of see that. And if it's a suburban area that has grown a lot, you can kind of see where the growth has occurred, and by turning on and off those layers. So that's a pretty neat feature. The USGS also has a website called StreamStats, and StreamStats is really cool. So you can search for a place, identify a study area, delineate a watershed, and then they have different reports where you can generate flow statistics, estimated flow statistics, such as peak flow or low flow, monthly flow, annual flow. You can generate a watershed map and some flow statistics. So this is an example where I clicked on the Flint River in near the town of Montezuma, Georgia. And then I clicked delineate the watershed. That's the first step. And so it takes a minute to do that. And so it, that's pretty far down on the Flint. So it had to generate a pretty big watershed in this example, all the way up to the headwaters near the Atlanta airport. And then you see on the left, you have options for different types of reports. Peak flow, urban peak flow, rural peak flow, low flow, monthly flow, all sorts of things that you can then generate a report for. And so then it will generate that report, and you can export that. I think as a PDF is one of the format options, but you can probably export it as a table as well. And it gives you various information about that watershed. And there's the low flow statistics, such as the 7-day, the 7Q10, the 7-day, 10-year low flow, where the value is given of 31.2 and the units are cubic feet per second. And so that can give you a general idea about your watershed. Another website that's very interesting, that has a lot of data. Again, you can go down a big rabbit hole on this one, is the water use data that the USGS makes available. And this is collected at the county level. So every point on this map that you see is a county. And so there's different types of things that they've collected here. You can look at water withdrawals as a total. And so the larger the circle, the more water is withdrawn in that county. And then you can break it down into different types: thermoelectric, irrigation, public supply, industrial, and so on. And then here's a map on that website that kind of gives a general summary of some of the interesting things you can learn by looking at this type of data. And so you can see there in eastern Arkansas, there's a lot of irrigation water that's withdrawn for rice fields and that sort of thing. Or you can see in the Louisiana and the Texas coast how the red are the industrial water withdrawals. And kind of in Georgia, that you see those big yellow ones, those are thermoelectric power plants seem to be the biggest water uses. Now those, usually the water is returned after it's used. And that's kind of what's explained up there in the top right. But it's often a little warmer than it was before it was taken out. But there's all kinds of ways that you can kind of dig into the water use data. You can look at it over time in this type of graph for the whole country at the state level. Look at how irrigation is compared over time by the country, that sort of thing. Another website that you might find interesting is the ESRI World Imagery Wayback website. And so again, it kind of has a time slider tool where you can look at imagery over time and see how a place has changed. And so like on the left, there's the Georgia Dome, and I can't remember how far ago this was, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And then you can see where they started building the Mercedes-Benz Stadium next to it in the middle slide. And then you can see on the right, after Mercedes-Benz was built and the Georgia Dome was demolished. And so you could look at this, for anywhere. You can look at this in your watershed of interest. Again, if you're kind of looking for things that have changed in your watershed, this can be a good tool. I mentioned earlier the Water Quality Portal is a website where you can search and download water quality monitoring data. Before, like in the How's My Waterway tool, we were looking at it through a web map where you can kind of click on features and filter in different ways. But this allows you, if you go to the website, to build your own queries in certain ways. And so, again, most state and federal agency data should be in there. I'm pretty sure Georgia EPD's data is going to be in there, and that's going to be the bulk of what's in there. But there's also a lot of USGS does a lot of water quality monitoring, and their data is going to be in here. And so you can search by state, by county. You can search by certain parameters where you see sampling parameters. You can search by watersheds, all sorts of different ways, time periods. So if you're only interested in the samples that were for a certain, parameter, just nitrogen samples or something like that. You could get those. And then you have, after you've done your query and it gives you kind of a summary of the results, you can then download those in different formats, like a spreadsheet or a KML file, which I mentioned earlier. You can bring a KML file into Google Earth if you want to create your own map where you have all the data for a certain location in one map. So that's an option too. So lots of good stuff there at the Water Quality Portal. This is a listing, a one-page listing, if you wanted to save this or print these out, of all the different websites that I've covered today. And let's see, and that's all I had today. I guess we could go ahead and see if there are any questions.
Yes, wow, thank you, Jon. Your presentation was just filled with so many resources. So I think everyone will, find something they can use. Like, we do have a few questions here. Let's see, Laura Early, she asked, these are all great resources. Can you email a list of all the links to the various tools? So yes, we'll be posting this onto our recordings and resources page on the Adopt a Stream website. And there will be a link to that page at the conclusion of this webinar, and it will also be sent out. So you will definitely have access to these afterwards.
And I went ahead and typed in Jon's email into the chat. So if you want to copy it and save it if you have questions for him later. Let's see.
All right, we also have a question from John Butler, and he asked, where are the KML layer files found for use on Google Earth?
So the KML layer is the one that EPA makes available that has kind of the summary of EPA.
Jon, you're buzzing again.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
No, it's still buzzing. Maybe we can go ahead and just, if you want to just type the answers in the chat or onto the Q&A directly. Can you see the Q&A at the bottom?
Okay, yeah, I see it.
I know that that's probably going to be a little bit difficult if the answer's long, but.
I'll go ahead and reply to some of these others.
Barbara also posted the water data. She posted the Google Earth viewing waters data using Google Earth link in the Q&A. So I'll go ahead and put that in the chat. Thank you, Barbara.
Barbara.
Do you want to try giving your speaker another shot, Jon? I don't know, maybe.
Is it better now?
No, unfortunately not.
Let me try. It might be one of us, so I'll go ahead and mute mine.
Yes, ma'am. Ooh, still.
Okay. Oops. One.
So in case our attendees can't see the typed answers, I'll just go ahead and read them. So John, his question about where the KML layer files are found for use on Google Earth. There is a link in the presentation to EPA's KML for loading them into Google Earth.
And here. Here are all the links from this session. This was in response to Jenna's question of asking if John could post the link list in the chat. So here are all of the links from this session. So if you guys want to copy and save those, so you can access them later, but we will also be posting them on our website on the resources page so that you can access them later as well.
And for Christina's question, do these links work for watersheds that transverse states? She is a monitor for both Georgia and the Alabama Tallapoosa watershed. So John replied, yes, these should work across state borders. So good to know in case there's any other monitors out there who are working across state lines.
And it looks like we just have one more question from Barbara. So I think John is working on answering that. But she said, which application would you recommend where one can delineate a custom watershed and then download as a shapefile or KMZ? Mary also mentioned that there is a How's My Waterway webinar on Thursday, August 27th. I'm assuming that's 2020, not 3030. And she posted the link to that. So I guess if you would like more information on how to use How's My Waterway, that'd be a great resource. So thank you, Mary, for providing that.
All right.
And oh, in response to Barbara's question about which application would you recommend where one can delineate a custom watershed and then download as a shapefile or KMZ, John said, I'm not positive, but I think StreamStats will let you do that. And Jenna confirmed that StreamStats will allow you to download a shapefile. So thank you.
Well, ooh, this is a really good question. So Christina asked, I have a monitoring spot with no internet. Is there a low-tech version on one of these sites? And we still have a few more minutes left in the hour. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen.
So Christina, do you think you could elaborate a little bit on your question about having a low-tech version on one of the sites? We got another question in the chat. Could you use your GPS for lat long and input the data later on? Maybe John, if you would want to leave and come back in again, and maybe we can see if we can just answer the questions verbally again, since you know, might be a little bit more organized. Thank you everyone for bearing with us through all this. Hopefully we'll get him back in a second. Thank you, John.
All right, I'm back. Can you hear me any better?
Yay! Yes, much better. Man, I don't know what that is, but there we go. Okay, great.
I guess we should have done that a few minutes ago. Sorry.
We're all working on it.
Yeah. All right. Are there any more questions? I can't see the questions now because I guess I logged out and it doesn't show me.
Okay.
Oh, I see one from Mary about the How's My Waterway webinar. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's coming up, so that'd be a good opportunity to learn even more about it.
We do, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, sorry. John, I'm not sure if you can see this question from Christina, but she clarified on her earlier question. She said, most of these links worked on site. Thought I saw a low-tech topo map. Yes, or put in data later?
Yeah, so yeah, if you're out in the field, you know, and you don't have internet access, you may want to, there's really, there are some, you know, ways that you can access the topo maps before you go out and print them out. That's the only thing I can think of as a low-tech way to do this. I'm not sure I'm answering the question right, but if that's kind of what they're looking for, you know, is you can print out the watershed boundary or any of this information and just kind of take it with you out in the field. Or if you want to collect information, like somebody asked earlier, in terms of collecting a latitude and longitude or other features of interest while you're out in the field, and then bring them back and add them to your map. And that's where something like that Google Earth could be useful. Let's say you wanted to kind of walk your stream and identify certain issues of interest. Maybe you saw something that looked like an illicit discharge or possibly illicit discharge or something like that. Then you could record the GPS, the lat long with the GPS, even if you don't have internet connection, and then later on add that to a Google Earth map by uploading those coordinates into the map. I hope that's kind of what they were looking for.
All right, and then let's see. Mary, she, sorry about the confusion, but she posted the link for the How's My Waterway webinar. So Cecilia went ahead and posted that into the group chat so that everyone can access that link. And we have another question here from Jenna. So she was not sure if you attended the watershed mapping session yesterday, but or Monday, but what would you say are the pros and cons between using StreamStat versus an ArcGIS online public account to delineate a watershed? And this is just for an average volunteer.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure I have the full answer, but I guess one benefit of StreamStats is you don't have to create an account. You don't have to log in. You can just go to the site and zoom into an area of interest and click, and then it will delineate the watershed. Now, the ArcGIS public account, I've seen the watershed delineation tool in ArcGIS online, which I'm imagining is what they're talking about there. And what that does is it's creating a watershed based on a national, what they call a digital elevation model. And the elevation model varies in different parts of the country in terms of the resolution. And I have seen sometimes where it creates some funky looking watersheds that are kind of trapezoidal or weird shapes that don't really look like a natural watershed. And so, but maybe that's improved. It's been a while since I've looked at that. So I guess my gut would tell me that StreamStats would probably do a better job. I haven't seen those funky looking watersheds in the watersheds from StreamStats, but I may not be. ArcGIS might be better now. Oh, I see somebody says, I find ArcGIS more user-friendly, but StreamStats has more information. So yeah, that's also true. The ArcGIS one is a little more user-friendly. And maybe it has gotten better with the resolution of the watersheds. I'm not sure.
Well, great. Well, right on time. That's 1 o'clock. So yes, if there's no more questions, or let's see. Barbara said the ArcGIS public account may not have all the analyzing tools available. So good point. Good point,
Yeah.
Barbara. Thank you. Take a moment. Any last minute questions? All right, well, if not, then we can go ahead and wrap up today's session. So just a few closing remarks and reminders. If you haven't already, please join the Confluence 2020 Facebook group. That is where you can get links for different sessions. You can connect with other conference attendees, and the link for that will be posted in the chat here momentarily. Also, if you don't follow us already, go ahead and give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Our handles are also in the chat. And let's see, we have so many more sessions coming up this month, so you can find registration links for those and to schedule online. And also, if you go through the Confluence Facebook group, you'll have direct access to those. And if you're not able to join us in a future session, no worries, because all the sessions will be recorded and posted online on our resources and recordings page.
Yep, and as per tradition, Confluence does have a silent auction going on. This year, the auction is being held online, and you can bid until the end of the month on August 31st. We have a lot of really great items this year, so please check them out. We posted that link in the chat as well, and get bidding. When you leave this webinar, you will be directed to a web page that will ask you to participate in a really quick 3-minute post-session survey. So just give us a little bit of feedback on what we can do to improve and how you enjoyed the session and all that good stuff. And as always, if you are interested in learning more about Georgia Adoptive Stream and would like to get involved or have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We did put that email in the chat. Do we have any last minutes? Thank you so much for everyone who came to join us today. And we hope to see you at another session soon.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.